Okay, well, it's that time. Let's get started here. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
The Carol Dunn is here, the Cone is here, Christina's here, Emily's here, and Kathy said she wasn't gonna be here, is that right?
That's right.
So, I'm here and Ryan is here. And do we have anybody online, right?
And as of right now, we do not.
Okay. So we did put some comments together, council did vote on them. And we did some wordsmithing. And I did present those comments to the Public Utilities Commission. I had understood that they were gonna limit comments to 2 minutes. But then when I got online, they said, oh, whatever, you know.
Yeah, somebody took advantage of
Cut
that.
mine down, but ours down, or the council's down, but so you got 2 versions. The shorter version is the one that I presented. The longer version is one that was submitted. So that's what those comments are.
We had 2 others from here.
Right.
I commented and this time.
Mhm.
That's it from Kansas City, and there was this one from Michael.
I didn't see Steve Andrews on there, but see.
Not that I know of. We had to leave early because we had a CAG meeting the same night, so, but I don't think, we're not, I was on there and it's. Well,
Morning, everyone.
Good morning. So what was the overall impression of the public hearing on your part of what you heard?
I think a lot of it was Northern Front Range people, you know, the focus on renewables, the focus on Excel. I mean, that's just, yeah, like general, a lot of comments about Excel, you know, and it was one-sided. You know, I mean, it was very pro CCEA. Yeah, I thought, didn't you? Yeah, yeah, in terms of overall, or at least wanting to know more, you know, about it.
Keeping in mind that, you know, consumer choice is really about generation source, at least so far. You know, the bill and what the committee, what the PUC is studying adds another dimension to it to look at just buying wholesale energy as a choice. But it was mostly, from my perspective, mostly focused on the renewables of the generation source and being able to choose that. But
I don't remember any specific comment, but it seems like there was just this general message to the PUC that we hope you come out with a good comprehensive report. I mean, I'm not quoting anybody, but that was my impression. That they, you know, certainly many of those Northern Front Range folks are active in promoting legislation for community choice energy. So I'm hoping that the study that the PUC does covers all, you know, covers things well that they need to study based on what the legislation was that created the study. Assume that we won't see that report till right around the due date in December.
I wonder if they have the ability to extend the due date. You know, they probably don't. They might, they might be able to do an interim final type thing, you know, where they produce an interim or something first. And
And I don't have a, but I think the legislation is actually agree about. Well, and this was this there? I thought I heard that this was like the 3rd hearing on the subject. Was it? They had several, but I can't tell you all the details. Some of them were more for expert like.
But-
Oh, right, okay. Did not.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
So if they're up in a legislative, type thing, they'll want to have that.
Well,
That's their, anybody's point.
I think they just probably put in the website.
Oh, right.
Mine.
Okay,
Session starts in January.
yeah,
so.
yeah.
And Black Hills and Excel already had commented on that, I presume. They,
I
they
don't
made their
know.
comments
You know-
about the,
You know, I tried to get on the PUC to find the proceedings for that. And yeah, I was not successful. I couldn't find that.
I found a page with all these links to
Mhm.
comments and.
Yeah.
It didn't-
Yeah.
that
And it could be, I didn't try it, but it could be you have to download it. That the online version, the link may not work. I didn't try that.
I don't.
But that's a possibility because sometimes yes, get all strange or something, but it was, you know, the searching on that paper, the one that I'm sure that we both looked at, had the exact name of the proceeding, and you put that in and it comes up blank. It doesn't, and what I wanted to do, what I was hopeful to be able to do was to, because we were told that there were 4 presentations at the top of that, you know, of the information that the PBC has there that would be pretty informative for us, and I tried to find those. And I couldn't find those. Dang, I wanted to find those for us. but-
Well, you could probably get help. I'm assuming some of those older county folks that are in touch with could probably, well, maybe direct us to how to get that.
it might not hurt to let them know that you tried to get a
Yeah.
hold of it and the links didn't work, you know, they might not even be aware of that.
That could be.
That's kind of like going to the grocery store when they have an ad and they don't have the product. Huh?
That's done on purpose. It's called a lost leader.
Yes.
John
Yeah.
Beadle is
Oh,
online, he does have his hand raised, so he may
Yeah,
have
sure.
some additional.
Oh, John, we've got John B. Hill
Yeah.
online. Go ahead.
Hi, so I think, John, the issue you might be having could be my fault. When I gave you guys the number for the case, I think I gave you 221 and it's 22I, I believe. So that third digit, after the twos, whatever it is on your, whatever you had, change it to the other. And that's the issue I was having for the longest time. And then I made the mistake by giving you all the wrong number.
Oh, way to go, John.
Well, but you know what I did, John, is I copied from the paper that both Emily and I saw, I copied the link and pasted it in their search box. And I think they've got 221 on their page and not 22I. So maybe that's why the link doesn't work, you know?
22I0027E,
Yes,
right?
and it's HG, I think, is that right? Does that sound right? HG?
I don't know about the HG, but I can tell you that, it should, all you should have to do is put in that proceeding number and everything should come up. That's been my experience when I do it right.
I'll try it again, and we'll see where we get to, because I would like to see those 4 presentations.
Yeah.
And to get,
And what it- now I'm looking at the link and Larry Milosevich's email. One of his emails.
I think I've actually downloaded those as well. I can certainly send them out to the group, whatever I have downloaded on my computer currently. I'm happy to share those.
okay, why don't you do that, John? That'd be really nice if you could send those to us, and we'll have those then for our edification.
Yeah, actually, I'm getting this work from Larry Milosevich's email, so I can forward that. to you.
And
Because
it
it
is
has a link to the proceedings.
227I is
Well, you
221I.
can't tell until you hit the
Oh.
link, but it's apparently it's got.
What's the whole thing? 22I what?
Dash 0027
Dash 0027
EE.
E. Capital or small? Thank you.
Although it shouldn't matter, but.
Well, you can tell what
They got a grouchy website, you know?
You could tell what a techie I am.
Okay, so anything further on the comments or anything? That went on with the PUC?
there's anything else that stood out. Anyone
No,
about the same line?
Yeah, but I don't, I mean, I was listening, but it was nothing that I hadn't heard already, I don't think. Because that, whoever spoke to us was on there too. And she,
Leslie, who was
Leslie, yeah, she had covered the topic pretty thoroughly, so.
I mean, it's just, if you summarize, it's just that general idea that any community that's in an industrial and utility service territory, we, as we all know, we have very little flexibility or power regarding anything, whether it's the cost, whether it's generation source, whatever it is. So I think that that's kind of part of that general theme too, that the desire, at least on the part of some communities, to loosen that up in some way, and this looks like the first way that anybody's going to try. The
Oh.
town of I'm sorry, town of Netherlands did have a person on talking about successfully working with Excel. So a town of about 1,000 people working with Excel on solar, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Things like that. Community solar, community solar, yeah. I think that was about it.
So what I'd like to do is kind of take us back to our purpose here. And our founding document, our resolution, that, just to refresh everybody, it says the city recognizes the importance of energy in cost operations and agreement. And the city understands the desire of the community to look at varying energy options and opportunities. And the city desires that the community work with the city in finding solutions to current energy needs. So therefore, we're established to review, evaluate, and make recommendations concerning energy options. So given that, I kind of wanted to go through a thought exercise or a tabletop exercise or an ideation strategy where we talk about those things and see what we think. I mean, the questions are really, what do we know? What don't we know? What do we need to know? And how do we get that? How do we get, if there's something we need to know, how do we get that? With the goal of being able to make recommendations to the city. And so, this is kind of a little exercise to maybe go ahead and do that. But maybe take a few minutes and look at the page that I gave you, all the first page, that, what are three, good morning, Steve. What three energy options? What three options do we have for energy costs? What three options do we have for operations? What three options do we have for agreements? And then, so take a minute and jot down maybe three or two or one or five, whatever you might think is a good thing. And then let's discuss and see what our collective wisdom is here.
You say more about your third one, options for agreements.
Mhm. Sure. Well, so just going back to our charter here, that says the city recognizes the importance of energy, including cost, operations, and agreements. So what are the three options we have for energy agreements? Essentially, I mean, that's what the city has asked us to look at.
By for costs, do you mean to lower costs or just,
Now, I'm pretty sure that's what council was interested in is
to lower costs?
Mhm.
I'm sorry, I'm having issues.
Yeah, sure.
What are the three energy options for costs? I need a better definition, costs, cost of energy generation, cost of
So-
maintaining infrastructure, cost of the future in terms of renewables.
So we're not interested. I don't think, and I don't think it was the intent of city council to have us look at more costly solutions for energy. So what are the three options for lowering costs?
Oh, just in terms of Black Hills, then you're talking.
Oh, well, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I'm not putting any, this is the brainstorming section. So think
Well, I'm
outside the
having a
box.
storm in my brain, so, you know. I'm-
Kind of cloudy right now.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Dust storm I drove through yesterday
Uh-huh.
in the panhandle.
Oh, there you go. That's, okay, well, I'll just sit here and listen and maybe it will become more clear.
I'll give it a shot. And really, if you want to, make up your own criteria, I mean, this is the our brainstorming, we are trying to think outside the box. Really, and see if there's some ideas, that we need to pursue, or things that we need to do as a committee. I mean, really, what bottom line is where I'm going with this is, I think that we need to remain focused as a committee as to what our goals and objectives are. What are we trying to do? What did city council ask us to do, as we understand it? And what are the ways that we need to be able to do that?
For me, one of the struggles with this is that we, the city, are kind of operating on the two platforms. We have things going through attorney to attorney. And on November 7th, we have another executive session on regarding, I guess, a couple of things going on there. Where there are communications with a wholesaler, there's communications with a co-op thing, and I don't know what the content, obviously, of that executive sessions may be. So you have that.
And let me just add there, the executive sessions are for the purpose of instructing negotiators.
Right,
As we go forward. So
Right.
that's the purpose of the executive session.
right. And so we have that operating on one track, and that's been true for some time now. I don't know quite know, maybe half a year or so ago, we started kind of on that track at the same time that the energy committee has been on its track.
It's been over a year.
Yeah, based on the original direction to the committee. So it's a little, I think, I don't know, it looks like Kirk and Carol can speak to it maybe better than I can, but it's a little bit of a struggle. Because of that two track where we really, as a city, I think we tried to ensure that we bring Kirk and Carol and in on, some of these executive sessions. We've had them sign the non-disclosure agreements or whatever they're called, so that they can get in on some of that. But it still feels like there's this pull between this committee and what it does, every 2 weeks or so. and then what the city council and what the attorneys are doing. So that's a long way of saying that maybe that's partly why we're struggling with. things.
Well,
Well, but remember, our charter doesn't give us the authority to tell city council what to do. Our charter from city council says, here are the things you guys need to look at. And so that's the question. What are the things that we as a committee need to look at, irrespective of whatever the city's doing? So some of our solutions may coincide with things that are happening with the city. Different proposals or whatever. But what is it we need to do to be able to review, evaluate, and make recommendations?
I don't disagree, other than we certainly wouldn't want the committee and the council to end up in two entirely different places.
Why not?
Because-
Why not?
Why not? Because
Why
then
not?
what's the purpose of having this committee?
The,
I hope we can reach a consensus on whatever we're
the,
doing among everyone.
I think the idea there is that we as a committee need to make our best recommendations based on our reviews and evaluations. If that's different than what council decides, that's all right. And so I don't mind if we end up in a completely different spot than council. That shouldn't be limiting on us in terms of what we look
I
at.
think that's a fair thing to say. I'll say too that sometimes I think some of us hear a little different message, which is kind of the message saying, are we at the end of what we need to be doing? And so we struggle with all of these things.
To me, I think what you're looking at here was the three energy options for cost, operations, and agreement. It goes back to what we originally started with. You got
Sure.
your Black Hills Electric, you got your municipals, and you got your co-ops.
Right.
So those are the
Exactly.
three, and then you, because it didn't, when I looked at that, it didn't make. That's what I went back to, because otherwise it's hard to conceptualize what we're talking about there, but you just need to go those three, and then you talk about the costs of what we have, and then you talk about the operations. And then you talk about the options for agreements. Which, with Black Hills, then there's already a couple of things that we've talked about as far as another type of agreement. Working together with them, plus the franchise agreement, those types of things. But just to stay in the same focus that we've been going all along. And what are the pros and cons to each one, and, is it feasible to go in one direction or not?
Right, yeah.
Pros and cons, you're saying the information.
The
we know
information
about
that-
each-
Yeah, that
Each
we,
one,
Uh-huh.
and to me, that comes down to, like I said, those costs, those different costs
Yeah.
of different parts of the whole process, the generation, the infrastructure,
yeah,
the future.
Yeah.
And weigh those again in the different scenarios.
yeah, that's,
Okay, all right,
that makes,
so I followed maybe like.
that, to me, that makes a little bit more sense that we, look at the three different types, because that's really the options that we have.
And I think there's that unknown point, which is the legislature either next session or ever going to do anything different that impacts these questions? And it could be community choice energy, or it could be something totally different, theoretically, only theoretically. It could be some other way that would give local communities a little more say in how they deal with an IOU, if they're in an IOU service territory. And again, this is just theoretical. It's not like I'm holding my breath thinking that that's ever gonna happen, but one of the first things I wrote down in that first category was that we need more flexibility in the law, that we're, I know I say this over and over. Any community in any IOU service territory has very little power or say so about how things are done. And even to impact costs, of an IOU that would require much more than we've done here in the last 10 years or so in terms of intervening in rate cases at the PUC and the cost that brings for the city to intervene and try to have more say down.
Well, we don't even have any say, like a movie scenario where the stockholders are unhappy and they go and take over the meeting and change things at the corporate level. We don't even have that
We're not,
choice.
we're not them.
No. And, you know, to make a corporation move their theory of business, their business model, we don't have any say in that. They'll just do what they do to do their job, which is to make the most money for their stockholders.
So in terms of the committee though, stepping back, looking at trying to forecast the future or, look at future developments. One way to think about that is short-term, medium-term, and long-term. But it kind of pulls us away from what our charge is, which is to review, evaluate, and make recommendations. Because, so let's take legislation as an example. What could this committee recommend to city council as far as legislation is concerned? Would we want to get 5 legislative proposals or 3? By the way, I just chose 3 because I felt bad asking everybody for 5. But so what would we do? What recommendation would we make about legislation to city council to look at cost of operations or agreements? What would we recommend the city council? And how would we achieve that recommendation? How would we reach consensus on something like that?
Well, community choice in energy is an example of, I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't, but it's an example of something that we could take a position on. It's the only thing that I'm aware of, and I've checked with CML. It's the only thing I'm aware of that's kind of moving through the process related to cost of energy and how this is set up in the law and contract. So theoretically, if we chose to, we could, when that legislation is actually written and introduced, we can take a decision.
No. That's where we go off the track.
So then what are you asking?
So waiting for something to happen in the future is taking us off track. We need to be focused. What are the reviews, evaluations we can make now? I mean, we've been at this for more than a year.
We can make that.
Well,
we can make that
and wait, I'm not saying whether we should or we shouldn't. I'm just saying that we cannot postpone decisions based on what may happen in the future. What we need to do is take the bull by the horns. If we want to take a position on community choice energy, that's fine. That's not a problem. We just need to discuss that. But that's part of the purpose of this exercise.
Right.
To say, what do we know? What do we don't know? What do we need to know to be able to make decisions? Okay, and if there's things that we cannot know until in the future, then maybe that's our recommendation to council, is that once something is finalized, like community choice energy by the legislature, which they may or may not be able to do. They may not be able to even finalize legislation, depending on how things work out in elections. So that's my point. It's unknown, although the last legislature intended the next legislature to make decisions. That's no guarantee at all. And so we should not hold our committee up or wait for future developments that are uncertain before we tackle the hard choices that we need to make. And if we want to say, if phrase it as such, if the legislature does take action on community choice energy, this would be the committee's recommendation, 3, 5 recommendation, whatever, that we think should be included in that, legislation. And that's all right, that's fine. But we need to keep in mind that we do have an objective, and we need to be working towards that objective.
Does this, in my little pea brain and foggy climate, does this make any sense at all, or am I getting maybe somewhere, start here? We know none of us appreciate high energy costs.
Right,
We know that a lot of it, or some of us, do not like Black Hills Energy. We know that energy costs, no matter where you're at or who you're with, are rising. So it makes sense to me that, and Emily, you can probably tell us, the lady from Boulder that fought the energy company for so long, and she spoke to us way back
Yes.
when.
that was,
Leslie.
Well, whoever,
Carrie Christine.
okay. Her, as I remember, her last words are relative, like her last words were to work with your present provider to see if you can work something out, like maybe not a franchise, but a working, let's say just a working agreement. I'm not even going to try to tackle the cost of it, because I don't think we can. I really don't. With everything everything's going up. I don't care what you talk about. It's all going up, and I don't see. We'll see what the elections do, but I don't see much of a change. So I think we have to work with who we have. Maybe not under a franchise, but like a working agreement that they continue to provide the energy, the infrastructure. It's here. Be very, very costly to convert to whatever. I think solar and wind are for the future, and I think that needs to continue to be worked on. But at the present time, most people, or a lot of people, will say it's not reliable or cost effective.
So what, and I'm asking for clarification,
Okay,
make sure she can understand, Doug, but basically, we know that we don't have much control over costs. We know that in terms of the system itself, the costs that you're talking about there, you're talking about different ownership options of the system. It'd be very expensive to do some different
than what we
ownership
have.
option than what we have. But that maybe the area that we could collaborate with our provider is in the area of solar and wind. Did I get that right?
Possibly, yeah, that's part of it. Sure.
Mhm.
I'm not saying solar and wind aren't in the future.
Mhm.
I loved Steve's car. But, you see all kinds of solar cars burning up nowadays too. So there's good and there's bad. I hope you're not in that.
Especially
Steve.
especially if they get doused with seawater.
But anyway, I think we have to, one of the recommendations I would say is I would be of the persuasion, of course, all you know how I feel, to stay with who we are. We know what they provide. We know they're going to go up in cost. We know everybody else is going up in cost. I have to decide at this point whether I want to run my pump or pay for city water to water my grass. So
Go to zero, Steve.
what's that?
Go to zero.
Oh, no, I don't appreciate that. But anyway, that's all right. But that's just one thing. To me, that's a very practical thing that we need to do.
Mhm. Okay,
I still go back to, we just need to go to those three categories and start making an outline of each one of them. Because we can go talking about this and that, and we haven't gotten anything down, so.
And
So-
I would be
And for
able
those-
to-
Yeah, and that's,
To fill out a structure.
yeah, and
But, you know, any business decision I ever made, you do that. You say,
Yeah.
how much it's gonna cost? You say labor, good, you know, materials, you know, and you just, and at the end of the day, it becomes pretty clear, although you may decide like, no, I really, really, really want to do this other thing and go do the other thing. But at least you have a basis to make a decision, a business decision.
then
And
take a-
that's what this comes down to, is the business of providing our residents and our businesses with electricity that they can afford.
And it's a very difficult business.
Oh,
decision
yeah,
Because it's a regulated monopoly with
right.
all the laws in the favor of Excel and Black Hills. That's just the nature of the environment. And for those of us who've worked on this almost 5 years now, when I first started working on it almost 5 years ago, it's always been about the cost to customers. It's never been about, do we like a company or not? No one around this table doesn't like Black Hills. They're great people. There's John Beadle right there, who's been helping us, working with us on a lot of things that we've asked them to present to us. So it's really about cost. It's about what the PUC came out with in their report of February 2021, where Black Hills was the only company in the state that was an outlier with significantly higher costs than the rest of the state. 34% higher at that time than the statewide average, 47% higher than Excel at that time for residential. And it's always been about that, but as we have seen, we are not able to influence those costs. We're just not able to unless.
How do we
change the law.
incentivize Black Hills to lower their rates?
There-
don't.
there's
You
no
don't.
no way.
Incentive.
Yeah.
So what
How
we're
do we
trying to do.
incentivize them to do more renewables or upgrade infrastructure? There's, and because at the end of the day, we're all gonna be paying for it anyway,
That's right.
so there's no incentive.
I mean, we struggle with that. and That's why
Yeah.
we're still entertaining some proposals and at least conversation with a couple of other types of providers. Don't know where that'll go, if anywhere. It may end up that those entities will have such substantial barriers for the city that we can't act on that. We don't know that yet, but it still comes down to the one issue that it started with, and that is that it's hard in a community with a high poverty rate to pay these kinds of costs. It's hard for businesses, particularly those that have a lot of refrigeration and freezers. It's hard for economic development because certain businesses, if they look at that, they're gonna say, well, I can do my business cheaper elsewhere because my electricity costs are a huge factor in my business. So none of that has changed, and, we're working diligently on all of it. We're still kind of where we were, other than we're all very much more knowledgeable.
So John, what's your idea?
so I think so as a committee member, I agree with Kurt. We've really kind of done the preliminary work to be able to move forward and end up with some recommendations. And it might be fair, Emily, to say that nobody likes the cost of energy that we have with Black Hills, rather than saying something about Black Hills. But we've started this. This is something that we have with, I've had with before. Okay, where, thank you, Chris, for doing all that work. But so we've got a lot of characteristics, rate determinations made by where profits are, how how it pays federal and state taxes. But what I think that we need to do is to, in the committee, discuss what, if we're going to make a recommendation about each one of those. Are we ready to do that? Is there something we don't need, that we don't know yet? Is there something that we need to know to be able to make a recommendation? Or are we, where are we in the recommendation process? Because that is the charge of this committee, to review, evaluate, and make recommendations.
So do we have a viable, maybe that's not the right word, but I'll just use the word viable. Someone who is willing to take it on besides Black Hills? Do we have? We've heard the people come in and did a study, they don't want anything to do with it. We've heard all kinds of things. We have Black Hills, we don't have any of the others, and I've heard since I've heard nothing any different that anybody else is willing to go with.
We have a wholesaler who's been interested for several years.
So Guzman,
And I don't know, I'll just say, I don't know what the status is with one of the co-ops that we've been talking to. That will come up in our November 7th executive session with city council.
has Guzman really given us anything?
We don't want to talk about what we've
Okay.
seen in,
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Executive session, but we can ask the question, what do we need to know about Guzman to be able to make a recommendation? And really, we're interested in low cost to to the customers, to the citizens here in Canyon City. But we're also, I think that along with that, we have to look at what the cost of achieving that option is. Because what Guzman, there are strings that what their offer is, there are strings that go along with that.
But we
That-
can't talk about
We
that,
can't
right?
talk about that, but it does, we can
Right.
say it does require the city to spend money.
If I can go back to Doug's question just a little bit,
Sure.
I think that some of that goes back to the question and the topic that we keep kind of circling back to, which is Kirk's comments about the matrix of the different options and doing some type of evaluation of what makes the most sense. What are we willing to do and what are we not willing to do within those various options, and what is the recommendation around that? It doesn't necessarily matter who the end provider is if the committee and the city are not willing to go through the steps for any one of those options.
That's good.
Basically just having an outline, going through and comparing and contrasting and just saying it's unknown how much money would have to be spent if you wanted to go through a legal battle, or you have no idea what the outcome might be. And,
Absolutely.
we just can't, we
So-
don't know.
But what we can do is we can estimate magnitudes. We don't know for sure what things are gonna cost, but it can be $1 sign, $2 signs, or $3, for the most expensive. So we can estimate magnitudes, or at least, probably good enough for our purposes here. There is a way to deal with the uncertainties involved, with not knowing for sure what things are going to be. But we
I don't know
can-
that that's our function here. I mean, we're not paid consultants.
Correct,
I mean,
Right.
there's only so much we can do.
right.
Right.
And
And
we can't go into how much it's gonna cost.
And I think that's where the matrix comes in, where at some point, the committee and council are gonna have to have a discussion about whether or not we're gonna hire outside consultants to do this work.
That, yeah, didn't we we as a city feel that to make the best decision possible,
As
we
a
really need to hire?
As a committee. Do we feel as a committee?
Well, the city would hire.
But it's, we're not acting on cities we have,
Oh,
we're
I-
acting on the
I
committee.
understand that.
Well, but you didn't phrase it that, way. That's my point, that we're acting as a committee, do we feel as a committee? That, and,
We could recommend as a committee that the city hire a consultant.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
yeah, yeah,
Gotcha.
That would be one of the recommendations.
sure,
So there is a whole lot of legal and financial things that are just. Unless
Beyond
you-
our knowledge,
Yeah.
beyond our ability to know.
They could pay us, but they wouldn't get very
Oh.
good product for that.
I'll go back to farming.
Yeah, I'll make cake all day long.
okay. So if we using Ryan's approach, what are we willing to do or not willing to do? To achieve a particular option, what is it gonna entail? Do we know the types of knowledge? Because there are unknowns, do we know the types of knowledge that have to be acquired? To achieve a particular option, like a municipalizer? What are the things that we have to know? Before we pull the trigger on municipalization, I mean, those are kind of the questions that we're all struggling with here. That I think that if we can answer those questions the best we can, even if it's qualitative. I think that's what the city is looking for us as a committee, from us as a committee. In terms of our review, evaluation, and recommendation.
I think a lot of that stuff has already been put in the report. It's just a matter of getting out our report before and going through it, picking out things that fit and be precise with it.
And are important
Yeah,
to the decision-making.
yes,
process.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of that stuff has already been discussed and written down.
Yeah, it needs to be put in a different form, maybe.
A little, yeah, a
Like
little
a-
bit different, and we just need to make sure to keep it on the same thought pattern as what we did before with the council, because we presented it with the three options that way, and just go through that, and I guess you just need to, then you need to look at, your operations. Is your operations gonna entail the generation, the distribution, and the,
At least,
those, couple, three
right,
items.
and provide our thinking on the answers to those. questions.
Yeah, and just say, well, here's what we currently have, and here's, what we understand about it. And with each one of them, then if you have your existing system, we are not exactly sure of the quality of the system that we have here, and would that be needed to upgrade, or, those types of questions, which we
Sure.
really can't answer at this point. But that way, at least you get the big picture of things, and exactly, okay, we really don't have a really good understanding of this. But we do, we would need to have somebody go look at that.
I agree with all that.
And I don't know that, just looking at this right now, and that we really, you'd have to sit down and think about this. You can't just do it, in a spur of the moment, because this needs to have some good thought behind it.
What would you suggest? What can we do as a committee to get that good copy?
Just outlined it. What needs to be done.
But what process would we use? So in other words, would we sit down as a committee to do that? What are you thinking?
Well, first of all, we need to get it arranged so that it makes more sense to me anyway. And I think it would make more sense for everybody in the council, because that's the path we've done with the three. And then just identify the costs. What kind of costs do we have? You could take the study shows the cost, and then you could take a look at what some of the costs are with municipals. Because they have some studies with that, and you can take a look at what some of the costs are for the cooperatives, because they have studies with that. And then I think with the costs, you would look at the PUC study in the appendix A. They said one of the major drivers of the cost was the generation that was paid for the gas generators, which is something that we have no control over, because that's the PUC, and that's the national model that the Public Utility Commissions use of letting the industrial or the investor-owned utilities make in essence, make a profit off of the infrastructure that they build. You know, some of those types of things. So you could go through that with the costs, and then you got your operations, you got your, how the generation, you can go through that with each one, what we have right now. In the distribution and go through, just go through that with each one of them.
And then, and building on what you said, I think, if I got this right, part of what we could look at is if the decision is taken from municipal, what does the study have? What are the high points the study has to get? If the decision is taken to go with a co-op, what are the high points that study has to hit? And be able to, give some information about what we think that if whatever the decision is, if there's different decision, if it's this one, what exactly does that mean in terms of, what we would recommend, what steps we might think city council might have to take, I guess. Does that sound right?
And I think you could really just take them one at a time. I mean, you could take a look at the cost and maybe do that one meeting and just have some sort of at least a more detailed outline of some of the issues, and then you can add or subtract according to what everybody feels. But I think that trying to do all that at once is just a little bit too much. But like you said, it's a brainstorming session to try to figure out the next steps that we would go. But it's just basically, I think, going back to the original longer study that we did and reading through that and bringing out some points.
So if we wanted to do that, if we wanted to do that stepwise process, so we would take one of the three categories, which is our status quo essentially, of cooperative or municipalization. What would we want to look at as a committee and discuss in terms of our overall objective, I guess? What do you think we would, so you said sit down as a committee and talk about cost. Okay, what do you think would be, what are the first three things we should look at or something?
We got cost with your generation, and you got cost with distribution. I mean, and the transmission. I mean, you got, those are your three major ones, and you could just talk about that a little bit.
So
And with municipalization, you're also gonna have to look at the cost of debt service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that, and then, like I said, that's all, we already have looked at all this stuff. It's just a matter of pulling this out. And
So how do you suggest we do that? How do you suggest we pull it out?
No, oh,
We
let
can
me
have
ask a question. Okay, let's talk municipalization. And let's talk facilities or distribution system. How do you find out what, number one, where we're truly at in our facilities here? What it would cost to replace those or to buy them out. And we know Black Hills is an unwilling seller. Where do you find that type of thing?
So Doug, basically what you asked is, if I understood it correctly, so what's the current status of our distribution system?
Yeah, let's
In
just
terms-
start right there.
And what would we have to do to know that? And do we have an idea of what that might cost?
We have an estimate from, who did it?
We have an
Oh.
estimate. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay,
Right.
sorry.
You did sign something.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay,
We don't want you.
but anyway. We need an objective study,
And,
not from a,
and we know that others have tried to do that, Pueblo notably. I mean, they went down this road where they hired a consultant and they looked at different things. They have different consulting reports that gave their city council information to determine whether Pueblo wanted to continue down the municipalization road. So we do have some, something we can use as a basis to talk about that. As we look at these different things.
can we get that information from Pueblo? If they've
I-
already
I
done
think-
it for theirs?
We have,
Yeah,
I've got
they're
it.
old, too,
Okay.
like
They've provided it.
5 years old.
Okay,
Well, and right, and you're right, but it doesn't matter for our purpose,
Well, true,
because it's the process
yeah.
we want to focus on.
I think you've got kind of two parallel tracks that kind of have to go. You're looking at the matrix of your different options and putting, the estimates that we have, kind of penciling those in. But that the parallel option is exactly what you're talking about, Doug, where, there's going to be a cost to have a third party do that evaluation. And what is the cost of doing that evaluation based off of which path you select?
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
And that's just part of the evaluation that you do.
exactly.
For each one, it's
Yeah.
gonna require something a little different.
right,
Like for Black Hills, there, you know what you have and what can you do to maybe make things better? That's one of the options too, one of your three. So you just go through and try to figure out as many options that you can with each one of the categories.
exactly. I think that's right on point, and I think that's where we need to be as a committee. Is to be able to do that. And provide. What our evaluation of the whole mess.
Yeah, because we just need to, because when you say costs is a pretty wide
Right,
description, how you can define cost in a lot of different ways, but I think. I defined it, what are the actual costs of some of the studies that have done and try to utilize. Third-party information that we already have, that we can obtain. And then just taking a look at the distribution, the transmission costs and the generation costs. So just keeping to that same theme.
so when city council said costs. I think we're in agreement, they really didn't understand what they were saying. And but then that becomes our charge, is to educate council on what that.
So we define costs.
This is
Yeah.
material cost. Cost of the consultant. Or whatever, I mean, there's different costs involved, so you're right, it's very broad.
And we're looking at even bigger costs than that, just the whole system costs. And then you can break it down a little bit more when you're looking specifically
Sure.
for each one.
So what would we start with? Like a page, 2 pages, 5 pages? What would we start with to be able to, number one, we probably need to have a set of documents for each option. But so if we're looking at one option, like municipalization, what would we put on our 1 page, 2 page, 10 pages to evaluate for us to work on?
For me, I couldn't answer you that right now. I'd have to make a spreadsheet and start
Yeah.
filling in the holes. That's how I work.
Okay, so how do
Yeah.
we, how do we get?
Well, don't we get there from what Kurt
Well,
was saying by
yeah.
starting with the work that was done, what, almost a year ago now?
Yeah.
And, you know, pulling out what we already have there and then seeing if we have something missing in the category.
Well, and in this brainstorming, we need a whiteboard right now, you know, because that's how I figure out things, is to see it laid out in
Right.
written form.
We could even
Numbers.
project it up here.
Yeah, I mean,
I will be out of town the next meeting.
Oh, sure.
Well,
well,
okay, well, tell you what,
this is not an overnight project.
I know,
it's not an overnight
Yeah.
project. Here's what I suggest, and then I want to recess this here for 5 minutes, I need to take a break.
I'd be back at the next meeting after that.
Okay.
We want to try to start with it.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's take a 5 minute break here,
Okay.
and then we'll come back.
Okay.
I think cost would be a good one just to start with.
Well, that's going to be the bottom line, because if the city can't afford it, we can't do it,
Well, I mean, just,
you know. I mean,
Yeah.
if they say, hey, this is, you know.
well, I'm
it's
trying to
not-
define what cost
You have
mean,
to look short.
what we think
Well, of course,
cost
but,
means.
Payback. and-
yeah.
Well, hey,
Oh,
cost could mean the cost of energy, but.
Yeah.
You know, in the evaluation of figuring out what the cost of energy
yeah.
is, if you go down any of these paths, you're gonna have to spend money.
Yeah,
We spend money on water. consultants, and so, when, you know, it's like, that's not
Take-
anything the city
Let's
doesn't
take
do.
John a break also, just because you stand up.
just have to see if it's a good investment.
Stop it, you stand up.
What
and
it
walk
is, is
there.
I can't.
See it.
And is it good or bad?
Hey, you want to introduce yourself? Miguel,
Yeah,
or-
sorry, so just walk right in.
That's okay.
I'm Miguel, I'm the climate and environment for Colorado Public Radio. Do a lot of work around the Pueblo area and doing a lot of energy issues, so when that topic of community wholesale electrical supply came forward and the state is studying it, I remember this, speaking with, Emily Gideon, beginning of this year or so, learning a bit about the process that you're going through right now, and I figured that Canyon City would be sort of a good way to have people be introduced or look at the topic, because if not, it's pretty complicated.
Yes.
It does. Quick.
Yeah,
It's very, when you look, it's very complex.
Yep.
Very.
It'd be great if I could get your names, numbers, if that's okay, if I have any other questions, so that'd be okay.
Sure. For me, it is.
I'll make sure I get you a card, okay?
Go ahead.
My name's Doug Cohen,
How do I spell that?
Koehn.
I think I'm.
There we go.
Cell phone,
Yeah,
719 429 9882.
what do you do on your day to day? Are you every household or?
No, I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm not connected in any committees, not anymore. Oh, yes, I am, right here.
Right here.
Right here, this is it.
Okay.
Okay, that's the extent, besides cause trouble, that's the extent of what I do just in the town of Canyon City. City of Canyon.
I must say, I think this committee looks real good on the resume.
If you wanted to get back to it, excellent.
You bet, thank you. Thanks for being here.
Now, of course.
I'm John.
Hi, I'm Miguel.
I'm Miguel.
It's very nice to meet you.
Uh-huh.
Do you mind if I, you know, number two? Just-
I don't mind at all. You're gonna have something there with,
How you been doing, Steve?
Oh. It's on a long road trip. Still recovering from
Oh, okay.
Wisconsin, Minnesota, North Dakota,
Oh, that is fun.
three
there you
thousand
go.
100 miles.
Did you go in your bedroom?
Sure.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, your quote bolt or whatever,
I don't view it as-
Colorado Public Radio.
Oh, Colorado South Radio.
I'm based
so
in
you
Denver,
went in a combustion
but I try to
engine
come
car.
to this series, it's like, man.
Good for you.
Uh-huh.
Don't tell anybody down.
The city and
Ah.
the legislature studying it, or we.
That's
Yeah, I
not
haven't
good.
made any progress with it at all in terms
Makes us kind of look at it.
of solar.
Sure.
Maybe you'll try to keep an open mind when the guy comes out his house. He's,
And, you know, not renew.
they're lowering that rates.
Right.
They're lowering.
Seeing the
Mhm.
process
30-40%.
and
Okay.
how it's a little more challenging than it's.
Oh, it
And
is.
everybody's rates. are
So you
going
can
up.
see this. is-
I don't know. I shouldn't speak for them now. because it's
In terms of-
possible that the rates They described being able to cut 30-40%.
That's what they said.
That's what you said. And I don't,
As well.
well, they have a 6-year plan to pay it off and they paid it off.
Well,
So the cost.
I'm on
If they
different
pay off the loan, their costs.
basically all spring.
They kept their rates the same for 6 years.
Oh,
All while their actual costs were
like to
going
think I'm
down.
retired.
For the loan,
When do
they
you
paid
get
off the
that?
loan, boom, their costs.
We
went
meet,
down.
twice
Like,
a month.
it's like not having.
It's the second and fourth Monday.
First and third.
Generator.
First so that's the
So-
formal council meeting. We also.
Be
have
sure you
two
find
meetings,
out
One we call a vision.
When that guy.
Well,
when
there's a
you-
general
this
government,
guy,
where it's, where, you know.
What,
the
either
formal
what they've
council
already
meeting
done in
is
terms of rates or what they plan to do. in
The
terms
informal meeting, we sit around.
I originally talked to them.
You know, about different subjects, try to have it.
And then I talked another year.
So we also do the. first,
I haven't-
third, Wednesday.
I haven't been updated. Well, I might have
A couple
talked
of
to them
days.
3 times.
Anyway, I appreciate it.
They came up with it. Listen to them. Confused. as to what time. When I talked about you, his rates,
No.
their rates definitely went down. I just don't know how, because they set their own rates, they can make their own decisions.
Do you mind if I spell your name?
Decide to
No, I
invest in
don't.
more infrastructure.
I understand.
So what did they go to and what did they come from?
They left Tri.
Okay.
They left Tri.
Would
They
you
went to
like-
Guzman.
Would you, okay.
Okay.
Tri-State is very expensive. Wholesale. Little less expensive though than Black Hills. Gas generators. What terms they cost or whatever. So they left the Tri-State. They went out, they buy their wholesale. from Guzman.
I don't know.
They.
That's fine.
Guzman funded their solar.
Okay.
And they put up enough solar.
You understand- you
to meet their
understand.
daytime.
Oh, yes, my own.
And they're a daytime, they're a wintertime. Utility because. they-
Um,
Small scale. Those ones, so it's not a summer.
Aside from this committee do work or anything.
Their people.
Are you in council?
Relatively small.
Are you in the council? too?
No.
It does.
I don't know how we compare it to Kings. Um,
Dr. David Munoz.
they invested in distributed solar.
Or
Megawatt
whenever.
here, 3 megawatts there, 5 megawatts
He's
there.
scheduled for the
1
fourth.
megawatt there, all near the loads.
Is our
So then lose some transmission.
It is.
It's kind of, the calendar got out of hand here.
Starting, anyway, when he joins you next week.
Yeah, it's the 31st.
Next meeting.
Yeah.
Be sure you ask him
It's
some
Monday,
questions.
and
Right.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where it's,
So it's like a 3-week.
yeah,
It's
Okay.
And I'll talk about, there's someone tentatively scheduled in December, whenever we start talking about scheduling going forward.
Okay, well, let's get started back up. So we'll talk about schedule going forward here in a minute, but let's finish up with where we are. So why don't we, as a group, so do we want to start from, which one do we want to start?
Here's what I could propose.
Okay,
I'll take a stab at the costs. And put some sort of a small document together. And that way, everybody can read it before. You know, I'll try to, we can get it out over the weekend, people can have a chance to read through it. And that way, we can have something to discuss, and if we want to go a different direction, fine, or if we add more stuff to it. At least it gives us something in writing that we could take a look at it before the meeting and go from there.
okay,
You know, I'll try to stay in the same thought pattern as what I've been talking about this morning.
okay.
But I'll get that out to you, the weekend prior to the next meeting.
So
Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that's great.
it does, I'm just, it's kind of the problem that we talked about already. Cost is such a broad subject. That I was thinking, well, maybe I can, if you do that, maybe I can kind of go through the three options and see what studies are needed. Or something, or at least what the questions the studies need to answer.
And I'll have to, yeah, and that, it's still very preliminary, so I'll just have to look through the stuff and get my mind back on the
Right.
Would that-
subject.
What I'm suggesting is, would that be redundant with what you're doing? you think?
Let's wait and see what we have first,
Okay.
instead of you spending extra time on that, and if it fits right in with it, then we can just go with that.
Okay.
Otherwise,
I'm good with that. I'm just, what I'm wondering is that, we ask you to do a lot and I'm just wondering if there, and trying to think of some way that some of us could do other things to move this forward too.
well, I think we can figure
But-
that out after we
Sure,
have something in writing.
and I'm
we
good.
can-
I'm good.
When we can determine, well, what else? Where else do we need to go, or is this the right direction, or we need to include this or take this out?
Well, it might be easier to, after we see the cost breakdown, how you do that. For the operations and the agreements, we might have a better idea of how to go about tackling those as well.
Yeah, because you're gonna have the costs are gonna,
Yeah,
you'll have,
That's
maybe the costs will be the big picture costs of your distribution transmission and generation on the top costs, and then if you take a look at operations, then you could maybe get into a little bit more detail. I don't know, I'm just talking off the top of my head there.
That's where,
well, the agreements, that's really, I need a better definition of that, because I'm not sure.
Well, my understanding of where we're at is your agreements, it would have to be what type of agreement that you would make with a municipal, or what type of,
With you,
Right.
with a cooperative, or your agreements that you could make with Black Hills.
Well, and what abilities and how the city would even go about something like that. These are legal things that are way.
But is that what you were
Sure.
thinking about?
Yes.
the
Okay,
agreements
all right.
with-
and we could, even though it is way out there, we can, perhaps we know some things that we can say, well, don't forget a legal agreement has to cover this.
Right,
Whatever,
Well,
whatever
yeah,
our,
there are costs involved in that too.
Sure.
Yeah,
yep,
okay, all right. Yeah, I'm on the right direction in my.
And I think we need to look at it as this is a potential investment in the community,
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any type of an investment, you have costs involved. What you have to do is you just have to say, from where we're coming at, are these costs
Going to benefit.
gonna benefit us as a community?
Right.
And
Yeah, and I'm sorry, John, not to, I know none of us have a crystal ball, but sometimes you have to push those things into the future and say, today's pain may be worth it
oh, I
in
understand that.
the
yeah.
future. Well, I'm sure you do. Yeah, that's just daily living.
so I really look at it as, we're looking at investments, are these investments a good investment or not?
Right. And-
So-
And part of that is figuring, trying to be sure we're expansive and figuring out, well, what are the payoffs? If we invested in some direction,
Right.
you know,
What can we expect?
what are those different payoffs that there would be from that investment over X amount?
Which I think we're going in that track right now, so I think it'll be precise that we could try to identify some of those issues.
Okay. You need any other input from us?
I think I just have to get the old study out and
Okay,
just think about it a little bit,
Sure.
see what,
so I suggest we all do that. That would be the one day 4/11/22. I think that's our latest one, is that correct? Does
that was the
sound
one
right?
that we gave to the council.
It was that late 2020.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Big-
Now, there was another one in April.
Yeah, I
I
dug out the one in April today, Brian, so yeah, the
Is that
latest one
the
in April.
full
I
pledge?
I think so. I think it is.
Or was that the stuff?
Well, now I'm on
Or what?
presentation?
4/11,
411, yeah.
21,
22.
22.
Well, it's this one that John.
Yeah.
Oh, chose.
But you're talking about
I'm
the
talking,
original.
I'm talking
Oh,
about
the
the
original.
original
Oh.
one. That's
That
where,
was-
that's where I'll go to, because that's got
Yeah.
a lot more information.
Right,
That was
right.
just a summary for the council,
Right.
just good. So I'll go back to the, I think it was November.
I think
Yeah.
it
I
was
think you're right.
Yeah, that's got more detail in it, and I'll just have to go back there.
Yeah, I
Take
think
a look.
that's a good idea for all of us to relook at all of that. It's amazing what we forget, what I.
That's what I got in.
No, you can send me. It's all right.
Yeah, it might, but
I think there's a later one. right?
yeah. Do you have the one that went out to council, Brian?
Oh, sure I do. It's a matter of making sure I get with the correct council date.
Yeah, was it a December council meeting?
Might have been November last year, or it may have been December, somewhere in that time frame.
Yeah.
That look back.
Would it be possible for, if you send me a copy and then we send it out to all the committee, just so that everybody's got that? Because I think it'd be helpful just
Or I.
for everybody. I think I know which one it is, but
I know we had.
I don't know
several
exactly. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what you sent to the council, so.
Let me. Let me look and see which one we sent to council.
Okay. Because I think that would be a good for everyone to review through that prior to,
Absolutely.
or you could just make copies for everybody too.
Well, or just send
Send
it out.
Electronic.
Yeah,
Yeah, send it out like fine.
I like paper.
Well, I do too.
I'll print it out.
but, We
Well,
don't want to cost the city any more than we already have.
no, that's an in kind. Yeah,
Oh, I'm not keeping track of all those dead trees I've killed on this committee.
that's all right.
That's okay. They got fast growing ones in
Oh.
Oregon.
Just need to plant them on. That's
Yeah.
another topic.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. I think we're good.
Yep,
All right.
Okay,
That's the plan.
so next time,
Yeah, and several things kind of spun out from, I can't even remember now the sequence of events. I was talking to several different people when you were gonna be absent, Don, and I was putting together having Leslie Kingston present to the committee. And then there were kind of spin-offs that came from my contact with someone named Chuck Cushy. And one of the people he suggested that we have present was this Dr. David Munoz, who is scheduled to present at our November 14th meeting. And he is in Taos. He said in his email back some weeks ago to me, he said he would be happy to spend some time with the committee talking about the energy transition that continues in the Taos region now and the challenges that he has seen over the past decade. He suggested maybe at some point we'd want to talk with Luis Reyes, who's the CEO of Kit Carson. I know Steve has mentioned him, Kit Carson Electric Co-op. Then Dr. Munoz says, however, at the outset, perhaps I can tell the story of what happened since I moved to Taos in 2012 and got involved with the movement in 2015, both as a member of the Rural Electric Cooperative and also a new member of the nonprofit Renewable Taos. So that's kind of what he's going to be talking about. And as we know, as a committee, we've talked before, and Steve did a one-pager case study for us about the transition. Basically, if I remember right, Kit Carson Electric got out of their long-term contract with Tri-State by working with Guzman Energy, because they, like many other communities, Delta Montrose and others, they didn't like their long-term contract. They didn't think the prices were very good, and they wanted to move toward renewables, which at that time, I think maybe Tri-State wasn't doing much of. So Guzman helped them make that transition. And so that's something I think will be helpful for us to know more about the transition and how that works. So that's what that's about. And then in the process of connecting with different people, Jenny Heater, who works at the National Renewable Energy Lab, was recommended to me. She works in kind of she manages the modeling and analysis group in the Accelerated Deployment and Decisions Support Center for NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab in Golden. She's been at NREL since 2009, researching topics such as equitable solar deployment and community solar deployment and cost. Most recently serving on a detailed assignment with the Department of Energy's Office of Economic Impact and Diversity to support implementation of the President's Justice 40 executive order. She has experience managing technical assistance programs for local governments, higher education institutions, and community solar stakeholders. So she is tentatively set, if it is okay with the committee, to present on December 12th, kind of what she calls a 101 presentation about community solar.
How do you spell her last name?
Heeter, and Jenny is Jenny.
Say that again. Technical assistance for local government.
That was technical assistance programs for local governments. She has extensive experience managing those, so that might be something that.
Well, you know, just like in relation to our tasking group. There's something not there that would be on a grant or something. Well, I don't know. It just,
Right.
Okay,
So if that sounds okay, I'll just get back to her and confirm. She's tentatively set for December 12th. Does that date work?
sure. Yeah, for Dr. Munoz, did you have, that'd be via Zoom,
Yes,
and did you give him a time?
yes, we're talking.
Okay.
Next meeting, right, Emily? Okay,
Okay,
and meanwhile, we've got the executive session on the 7th, is that correct?
That is
And what
correct.
time, Brian?
It will be a 5 PM.
At 5. Okay.
Yep.
November 7th. Man, that means it fell for some. 2 weeks from today.
Yes. And the committee members are included.
That is correct.
And I did have an idea that I haven't brought up yet, but will whenever we're ready, about a potential presentation maybe for Black Hill. It just kind of popped in my head.
Mhm.
I'm curious because we kind of see that there's a lot of grant money, there's a lot of work happening at the federal and state level to get more fast chargers deployed around the state, around the country, as electric cars increase in numbers. And I'm curious what has to happen on the utility side in order to make those happen. Do they have, what kind of infrastructure do they have to be prepared to have at these locations where fast chargers are put in? So I don't know, John V. Hill, if you can hear me, is that something that Black Hills could talk to us about?
Did you catch that, John, or you need a summary? You're on mute.
We're not hearing you, John.
He unmuted, but I don't know.
Oh, try again.
You're still
Uh-oh.
muted, John. Something's going on.
Hang on,
Dang it.
or technology.
It was the infamous double mute. I'm sorry about that.
Okay, there we go.
As you may be able to see, I switched to my headphones because it was kind of breaking in and out. So I'm using my phone. So they were both muted. I think what I heard was Emily said that she used interest in more fast chargers and what has to happen on the utility side in order to support that. Yeah, I'm happy to. Devin Moeller works with, he's our renewable energy coordinator, and he works with a number of different entities, including right now we're working with, the school district to get some fast charging infrastructure in place for them, and then support the grant applications for their chargers. But I'm happy to have him scheduled for a presentation for you all. We're also, as I mentioned before, working with the city of Pueblo to help electrify their police fleet. And, again, we're working with them on that. So there's certainly some things that we can do to help support the rollout of charging infrastructure.
Okay,
If that's of interest to the committee, I guess just need to hear from everyone, but I think that would be helpful to know.
Hey, John, just a question. Is that you guys charger at Sam's? Oh, is that? I thought I had to talk
Yeah,
with
right
that.
here.
better there.
I know that's not you, John. Is that your fast charger or Black Hills fast charger at Sam's in Pueblo?
So we don't own any fast charging. We don't own charging infrastructure, generally speaking, Doug. Usually those are third parties. And I believe the one at Sam's was a Tesla charging station.
Okay, thank you.
What does that mean, John? A Tesla charging station? Does that mean that Tesla is paid to put it in, do you think?
They've paid to put it
Yeah.
in, and they also have a different charger
Oh,
adapter.
Yeah.
Quiet hearing.
Yeah.
oh, boy.
Yeah. Yeah, they both, Tesla both owns and operates their charging facilities, I believe. And then anything that is not Tesla branded is most likely either owned by a private business. As an example, there might be a hotel that wants to own their own, or is owned by a third party, like the one in Canyon City, where a developer has developed it and operates it independently.
But you provide, or Black Hills provides the power to do that?
Yes, they're using our electricity, and then they set their charging rates based on, whatever their business model is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
One, one other thing I was thinking, seems like sometime this summer we talked about potential of having someone from the Colorado Energy Office come in and speak with some of the programs that they have available that we might be able to get to some of our residents, just so that we were a little bit more up to tune with what already exists there that could potentially help out some of our residents here.
That's.
And who knows, they might even be able to give us a little update as far as if there's any money available for grants,
Might be good to, have more of that state level perspective of where they are. We're kind of making guesses here and there from what we read, so to speak. But might be good to get the state's perspective on
Okay.
where they are.
Put that on my to-do list.
Well, and Emily and I have been on a couple of these environmental justice things, not only through the state, but EPA, and right now. They seem that they're just trying to get their act together after 18 months or so. It's very frustrating. We don't have, some of them have had some good information, and some are just like still arguing about who's in charge, so it's like, come on, people, stop wasting time and money and let's get something done.
Government.
Okay. Anything else for us today?
Yes. Citizens request to
Oh,
speak.
sure.
Is on the agenda. Since this was a committee exercise that you went through, I didn't feel it's appropriate to participate. However, during the citizens' right to speak, I will exercise that right if I may. For the first one, I wrote, for an energy option, switch to a wholesaler service provider combo, Guzman, or other, and San Isabel or other. And I want to add that based on my conversations with Jerry Warren, I described those in a presentation to you folks. Jerry, just to remind you, Jerry Warren is a consultant. He's based in Florida. He wrote the consultant report for this city of Winter Park to break away. And they said, okay, so you think this could work? You take it over, you run it. And he did. And that was literally of the 20 or so, and I'm still in touch with him down there. Of the 25 or so, he's probably done by now. Consultant reports, only Winter Park actually ever broke away. All the other ones didn't. And he said, in all other cases, the finances penciled out and they chose not to exercise the option. So I would say that you should be able to lower costs, probably not in less than a decade, maybe more. But confidentiality problems make this inaccessible to the public like me at this point. So I want to point out that if you're going to have a discussion in public at some point that's going to require a decision, you're going to have to figure out through your confidentiality agreement with your partner, what you can and can't share. Because I can't sit here and really say with much confidence how much or when you could save anything based on having no information technically. So just a thought. Oh, the other thing is, Kirk, pop quiz. This was sent to you in an email. What % of new generation in the United States last year was solar? New generation.
You're looking at me, I don't know.
I sent you the email. This is a pop quiz.
You-
Can anyone else on the committee?
I can't remember 2 hours ago.
Can anyone else on the committee answer my question? What was the percent? And what was the percent of energy in new generation that was solar last year? This is what Kirk describes, Doug describes as the energy of the future. And sorry, time's up. The answer is 35%.
I was gonna say 30.
It was the largest.
In my mind.
I believe natural gas is next. You can check what I sent you to
Of new
see.
generation. Solar
And
was
storage.
35.
35% was the largest in the United States. That's, coal wasn't there, no coal last year. Natural gas, it was ahead of natural gas. It was ahead of wind. Wind was, I think, second, natural gas third, and storage at 8%
Wow.
was a new player in the game. Notice no nuclear, no coal. So anyway, that was my comment on your comment there as to it not being the energy of the future, it's here.
It's here.
I just
Oh.
drove through the panhandle over the weekend, and,
Yeah,
Texas
Frank.
has a lot of wind,
yeah.
and they could have a lot more turbines up there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to speak.
Absolutely. It's always interesting. Okay, with nothing else, I guess we're adjourned.